So here I am in the Köln-Bonn airport. It's about 7 in the morning and I'm getting ready for my flight to Berlin. I set off the metal detector. I don't usually do that in Canada, but I guess my chain actually was enough to do it. And the pat down that followed was fairly substantial, so I'm not used to getting quite that much scrutiny, but anyway, they let me in, so that's a good thing. So a couple hours to go. I'm going to try and find some Frühstück, and then I'm on my way to Berlin. It's 7:30 in the morning, and these people behind me are having a beer. Ich liebe Deutschland. The Köln-Bonn airport had this very neat toy airplane playground that made me think of my kids. Coming into Berlin, I got a good view out my window of the Wannsee, which is just southwest of Tegel Airport. Behind the Iron Curtain, East Berlin. It's not so scary now. Now in Berlin, I've seen quite a few of these little huts around, and they have them on the street, and they're actually public toilets. They're pretty small, but they look fairly new, and so you're not that scared to go into them, sort of thing. And there's instructions on them in 4 languages, so you spend your money and you do your business. Now most of the train stations have these little food stands, and I found this food stand that looked pretty good. This guy had Doner in Brot, which means doner in bread. And so I ordered one of those, and then he also had some currywurst. I thought the doner would be a little small for me, so I also ordered the currywurst, which is a delicacy that's specific to Berlin, that was supposedly invented just after World War II by a lady in Berlin. And it's not common anywhere else. Only in Berlin is it commonly eaten. So anyway, that's what I had for lunch. The lunch was delicious. The doner was particularly good. But one thing that happened was I had a couple of wasps buzzing around, and just after I took this picture, I went to take a bite and didn't notice the wasp on it, and got a wasp in my mouth, and he stung my tongue. And it hurt. I have to admit, my eyes were watering pretty good. It was very unpleasant. So I highly recommend looking for wasps before you bite down. So I'm here at Humboldt University in the middle of Berlin. And if you look around, there's a nice big square here. And down here you can see a plaque on the ground, and it says, on the right-hand side here, it says, in the middle of this Platz, or square, burnt on the 10th of May 1933, National Socialist students, the works of hundreds of free writers, publicists, philosophers, and scientists. And on this side here, I think it says something to the effect of it was a prelude when man burns books, man in the end burns men. Something to that effect. Alright, I'm here at the Brandenburg Gate. This was the big gate between East and West Berlin. When the Soviets occupied the East Berlin. I'm actually on the east side right now. I'm going to do something that a lot of people probably wanted to do in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And that is, I'm going to walk to the west side. Here we go. And just like that, I'm a free man. So this is the Soviet War Memorial in Berlin to the war dead from the Second World War. Apparently there's 2,000 Soviet soldiers buried here. and this is in the Tiergarten in Berlin. It's actually on the West Berlin side, ironically. I'm about 400 meters west of the Brandenburg Gate in the Tiergarten. And apparently during the West-East Cold War, the Soviet soldiers were allowed to march out of the gate and stand guard at this memorial by the West. So every day there was a Soviet honor guard that stood out here. Marched from the Brandenburg Gate over here and then marched back at the end of the day or something. So I'm here next to the Siegessäule in Berlin, and you can't watch a video about the Nazis' rise to power without seeing this in it somewhere. It's kind of down at the end of the other end of the Tiergarten. Well, I guess I'm sort of in the middle of the Tiergarten, but it's sort of towards the west end now from the Brandenburg Gate. And it's a pretty amazing sight to see this thing down the Tiergarten. It's really really interesting. You can see why it's highlighted in so many movies and things. So just a bit north of the Siegessäule is Bellevue Castle, and this is actually the official residence of the German president since 1994, when they moved the capital back to Berlin, I believe. So this is the White House of Germany, I guess you could say. Okay, I'm here. I'm close to the Reichstag in Berlin, Germany, and parking along the Tiergarten here can be at a premium, as is exampled by this guy here, who fortunately for him had a smart car so he could easily fit into the little space provided. Now, all I have to say about this is if you had a motorcycle, it wouldn't even look so awkward. So this is the Reichstag. This is the home of German Parliament. So this is basically their Congress, or their Parliament Hill, I guess you could say. And it was totally bombed out. This is exactly the same location as it was in World War II, but it was totally bombed out, and it's been basically rebuilt, although some things have been changed a little bit. The dome on top is different than it was then, but for the most part it's very similar to what it looked like before the war. The main part of the building is, anyway. I saw these around town a couple of times. These are called the beer bike or whatever, and it was basically a bar where you sat and pedaled, and it drove around town, and there was one guy that steered, and he gave you the tour of the city, and there was another guy that poured beer, and so you sat and drank beer and pedaled around the city. Well, look at that. The government is having an open door, or in English we might say an open house, today and tomorrow. I'm wondering if maybe I should go and be a Regier in the Regierung. That would be an interesting combination, I think. These guys are starting to Friedrich Wilhelm. They have both Friedrichstrasse and Wilhelmstrasse. So this is Friedrichstrasse in the middle of Berlin. It's pretty crowded. Lots of people about doing their stuff, and if I turn around here, behind me you can see the train station of Bahnhof. That's where I gotta go to catch my train to Adlershof, which is where Bessie is, the synchrotron. So that was my first day in Berlin.